Welcome to AE News. I'm Leila Masimova bringing you the latest news. Turkey and Lebanon pledged to work together for regional stability with a focus on Syria, Gaza and Lebanon security. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelinsky meets NATO leaders in Brussels to discuss security guarantees. 11 killed in suspected arson attack at Hanoi cafe in Vietnam. Police detained a suspect believed to be responsible for the blaze. As the world watches Syria face the aftermath of Assad's rule and the formation of a new government, Turkey's role in regional peace efforts takes center stage. The president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, stated that Turkey and Lebanon will act together for stability in Syria, calling it the start of a new era for the region.
Addressing a press conference with Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, announced a collaborative effort with Lebanon to ensure stability in Syria, lasting peace in Gaza and broader regional stability.
Lübnan'ın güvenliği bölgenin istikrarından ayrı.
Lebanon's security cannot be evaluated separately from the region's stability. Without ensuring a ceasefire and a lasting peace in Gaza, our region cannot know calm.
Bölgemiz huzura kavuşamaz.
We also count on the role you enjoy and the active presence in the region and the world, especially in light of the radical political changes taking place in our geographical surroundings, especially in Syria, which is witnessing an Israeli occupation of part of its land, and we must exert strong pressure to end it immediately.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that Israeli troops will occupy a buffer zone inside Syria for the foreseeable future. The move is aimed at protecting Israel's security interests. Tensions remain high across the region, but the coordinated efforts of Ankara, Beirut, and the European Union offer a glimmer of hope for lasting peace and stability. Earlier this week, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, met EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Ankara to discuss Syria. Both reaffirmed their commitment to Syria's sovereignty and the goal of fostering an inclusive government.
Turkey welcomed the EU's recognition of its candidate status, calling it an accurate and realistic approach. The statement followed the EU General Affairs Council's adoption of its annual conclusions on the enlargement process. The minister welcomed the EU's recognition of Turkey's candidate status, macroeconomic progress and efforts on trade issues. Ankara also praised that resumption of high-level economic dialogue and European Investment Bank activities. Turkey expressed satisfaction with the EU's acknowledgement of its role in easing Eastern Mediterranean tensions and addressing the Russia-Ukraine war, reaffirming EU membership as its strategic goal and urging a new vision to strengthen membership prospects. A series of Israeli airstrikes hit military targets in Yemen, including energy infrastructure in the capital of Sana'a. This followed the interception of missiles fired from Yemen.
Early Thursday morning, sirens blared across central Israel as a missile launched from Yemen was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force. The projectile, which triggered a loud explosion, was heading towards the country from Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen. While no casualties were reported in Israel, debris from the interception caused significant damage to a school in Ramat Gan, near Tel Aviv, where the main building collapsed and classes were canceled for younger students. In response to the missile attack, the Israeli military confirmed conducting a series of precision airstrikes on Houthi military sites, including ports and energy infrastructure in Sana'a. According to Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, a spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces. These sites were strategically used by the Houthis in military operations. Masirat TV, the news outlet controlled by the Houthi movement, reported that Israeli strikes also targeted the port of Salif and the Ras Sisa oil facility in Hodeidah, killing at least 9 people. In addition, central power stations both south and north of Sana'a were hit. Later, fire trucks were seen responding to a power plant in Sana'a. The Houthi group, which has launched numerous missiles and drone attacks against Israel, has justified these actions as solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, who have been under heavy Israeli bombardment since October 2023.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelinsky engaged with NATO leaders and European officials in Brussels to discuss Ukraine's security needs. Zelensky describes their meetings as a valuable opportunity to address both immediate and long-term security guarantees for Ukraine.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky met with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and European leaders during his 2-day visit to Brussels. Zelensky stressed the need for a unified position among Ukraine and its international partners to strengthen Ukraine's defenses. Mark Rutte showed his support and indicated the alliance will do its best.
Very much high on the agenda is to make sure that the President, his team, Ukraine are in the best possible position one day, when they decide so, to start the peace talks. And that means that we have to do everything now to make sure that when it comes to air defense, when it comes to other weapon systems, that we make sure that we provide whatever we can. We know
Zelensky highlighted the importance of the meetings to align Ukraine's future security and noted that reliable guarantees were crucial for achieving lasting peace.
I think it's a very good opportunity to speak about security guarantees for Ukraine for today and for tomorrow, as you said. Well, almost everything said. So, but it's really very important that to use these 2 days in Brussels to meet with all our partners and to have the same, what is very important, not divided, the same joint position of Europe.
Rutte reaffirmed NATO's commitment to Ukraine, including the provision of air defense systems and weapons, with $1 billion pledged in security assistance this year. He also announced that NATO's command center in Wiesbaden, Germany, is now operational, aiding Ukraine's troop training and security efforts.
allies remain committed to delivering on the financial pledge of 40 billion euros in security assistance for Ukraine this year. And the NATO command in Wiesbaden for security assistance and training for Ukraine is now up and running. But we must go further to decisively change the course of this war.
In addition to his talks with NATO leaders, Zelensky also met with French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss the potential deployment of foreign peacekeeping forces in Ukraine. This proposal first raised by Macron in February. According to Zelensky's post on X, no consensus has been reached during informal meeting, but the two leaders continue to explore the possibility.
The UN humanitarian coordinator for Ukraine, Messias Shmali, raised concerns over the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine due to ongoing war and attacks on energy infrastructure. Recent strikes caused widespread blackouts, leaving millions vulnerable, particularly in high-rise buildings without heating, clean water or sewage systems during freezing temperatures. Shmali warns that energy crisis could lead to more displacement and potential cross-border migration, highlighting the difficulties faced by civilians in Russian-occupied areas.
Allow me also to mention my concern as humanitarian coordinator for the plight of civilians in the temporarily occupied territories. We should not forget them. I saw humanitarian actors implementing what we're calling the Humanitarian Winter Response Plan to address emergency needs by delivering solid fuel, providing cash for winter to ensure people can stay warm, and ensuring water systems then continue to work.
A Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jet from the United Kingdom Royal Air Force landed at Mertet Air Base in Ankara, marking a significant development in Turkey's ongoing defense discussions.
The arrival of this jet provided an opportunity for Turkish officials to observe the aircraft closely. Turkish Defense Minister Yaşar Güler announced on December 14th that 2 Eurofighter jets, which recently participated in a drill in Qatar, would arrive in Ankara to allow Turkish authorities to inspect the aircraft. Güler also emphasized that discussions regarding Ankara's potential purchase of the Eurofighter jets were progressing positively. Eurofighter Typhoon warplanes are a joint production of the UK, Germany, Italy and Spain. While Ankara has expressed interest in acquiring the warplanes, the process has been complicated by Germany's objections, as approval from all producing nations is required for the sale. In recent years, Germany has largely blocked arms sales to Turkey due to domestic political pressures in Berlin and differing foreign policy stances, primarily influenced by the Greens Party, a coalition partner for Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
Tragedy struck in Hanoi after a deadly fire claimed multiple lives in a local cafe. Authorities have launched an investigation and detained a suspect believed to be responsible for the blaze.
A devastating fire broke out late last night at a 3-story cafe and karaoke bar in Hanoi. Authorities say the blaze started on the ground floor, engulfing the building and trapping patrons inside. The fire, reported around 11 p.m., was allegedly started by a man in his early 50s following dispute with staff. According to Vietnam's Ministry of Public Security, the suspect confessed to using gasoline to ignite the flames. Firefighters worked through the night to battle the intense blaze and rescue those trapped. 7 people were pulled from the building, with 2 rushed to the hospital. Tragically, 11 others did not survive. As the investigation continues, the building remains cordoned off, now classified as a crime scene. Authorities are working to determine further details about the suspect and his motives.
A private plane crashed in San Fernando, Argentina, resulting in the tragic deaths of the pilot and co-pilot.
The plane, which had departed from Uruguay, crashed while attempting to land at San Fernando International Airport, north of Buenos Aires, Argentina. The Bombardier Challenger 300 aircraft, returning from a trip to Punta del Este, was unable to brake after landing. This caused it to veer off the runway, smash through a perimeter fence and crash into a row of houses, leading to an explosion. Several houses and vehicles were damaged in the incident.
I'm sorry, I'm still nervous. I can't recover because it was overwhelming to see the fire and smoke. My mom was inside the house with everyone, my nephew and the pregnant tenant renting a room. Everyone was inside.
Flames engulfed the wreckage and firefighters were dispatched to the scene.
I didn't pay attention until someone called me and said, "Sandra, the plane crashed." The whole house started shaking, neighbors' windows exploded, everything trembled, and then the explosion started one after another, and the smoke filled the house. We couldn't see anything. I ran out crying and screaming.
Argentinian reports state that the deceased crew members were identified as Martin Fernandez Loza and Agustin Orforte. There were no other passengers on board the plane. The reports also indicate that the aircraft belonged to Jorge Brito, the owner of Banco Macro and the president of the River Plate Football Club.
A French court today declares the ex-husband of José Pellico guilty and was reading out verdicts against dozens of other men charged in the case. The Pellico trial has captured global attention, shedding light on the issue of sexual violence in France and beyond.
A French court found all 51 defendants guilty in a drugging and rape case that horrified the world and transformed the victim, Gisèle Pellico, into a stirring symbol of courage and resilience. Pellicot's ex-husband, Dominique Pellico, had pleaded guilty to drugging her repeatedly for almost a decade, to rape her, and to offer up her unconscious body for sex to dozens of strangers he had met online. A panel of 5 judges sentenced him to the maximum 20 years in jail, as requested by prosecutors. Despite enduring years of unimaginable trauma, Gisèle Pellico chose to make her trial public to inspire other survivors to come forward and break the stigma of shame. Her bravery has sparked nationwide protests and demonstrations in her support. While some defendants claimed they believed the acts were consensual, Dominique Pellico has stated they were fully aware of their actions. The trial has reignited calls to reform France's rape laws, which currently do not explicitly require consent, focusing instead on proving intent through violence or coercion. Unlike in some other European countries, French law makes no mention of a requirement that sex involve consent, and requires prosecutors to prove a perpetrator's intent to rape using violence, coercion, threat, or surprise. The Pellicot trial stands as a powerful moment, demanding justice for survivors and urgent action to combat sexual violence.
The official death toll from Cyclone Chetan in Mozambique has risen to 45. During the cyclone, over 90% of homes were damaged or destroyed in some areas. Preliminary assessments indicate that around 190,000 people urgently need humanitarian aid. 33 schools were affected and nearly 10,000 homes were destroyed, with some villages left with almost no standing houses. In Malawi, the death toll has risen to 13 after the storm, which hit continental Africa following its passage through Mayotte. Relief operations are in full swing in Mayotte after Cyclone Chetan ravaged the Indian Ocean archipelago, leaving widespread devastation in its wake. Many areas remain inaccessible due to the damaged infrastructure, delaying rescue and recovery efforts.
Cyclone Chetan has killed at least 31 people, with local officials fearing the death toll could rise to thousands. More than 1,300 injuries have been reported. On Wednesday, supplies began arriving in Mayotte to address critical needs, including food and water. Residents flocked to distribution points and wells, desperately filling jerry cans and buckets as water supplies remain severely disrupted. Some turned to rivers for laundry and personal hygiene.
We have no choice. The water is very, very dirty. We shower with it, we scratch ourselves. It hurts us a lot. But we have no choice, especially for the children. When they shower, they scratch themselves a lot.
We haven't seen anyone from the government and all that. For the moment, we have hope. We were told that there was help on the way. So for now, we organize ourselves as the best we can. For example, we have made our well available to people. It has been in use since the beginning of the crisis. Every day from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., lots of people come here.
Authorities in Mayotte have pledged to restore running water to half the population by this weekend. 120 tons of food aid continues being distributed in France's poorest overseas territory. An air bridge from nearby Reunion Island has been established, and the ship carrying over 100 containers of aid is en route, expected to reach Mayotte within 3 days.
Less than 24 hours after the cyclone hit, there were already 3 air rotations on the runway in Mayotte, which is close to commercial traffic, as you know. We have a considerable increase in power of the resources committed by the state. Already there are 9 flights, 9 round trips to Mayotte, state planes and Air Austral planes that are chartered by the state.
French authorities have shared footage of bottled water and food being distributed in Pamanzi, with gendarmeries and soldiers ensuring the security of the operations. However, the full scale of the damage remains unclear, with relief efforts hampered by inaccessible areas and ongoing infrastructure challenges.
Cyclone Chetan's devastation in Mayotte underscores France's neglect of its overseas territories. The disaster highlights ongoing poverty, overcrowding and inadequate support from the French government.
The Cyclone Chetan's destructions exposed long-standing issues of poverty, overcrowding and climate vulnerability in Mayotte. The island's fragile infrastructure and underfunded public services have left its residents struggling to cope. Local leaders have sharply criticized the French government, accusing it of neglecting Mayotte's needs, especially in the wake of the disaster, and demanding more support to address the health and infrastructure crisis exacerbated by the cyclone. Mayotte is the poorest of France's overseas territories, with the lowest GDP per capita in the nation, a stark contrast to wealthier regions like Île-de-France. The island also faces health challenges, rarely seen in mainland France, including frequent outbreaks of hepatitis A, cholera and typhoid fever. Despite these struggles, the French government's response has been criticized for being insufficient, raising questions about President Macron's commitment to supporting Mayotte and other overseas territories. The Mayotte crisis highlights deep issues within the French government, mirrored by strong opposition to the 2025 budget. Prime Minister François Bayrou faced criticism over tax hikes, increased borrowing and reliance on last year's framework. Left-wing parties have condemned the plan, while Marine Le Pen's national rally criticized the tax increases but withheld final judgment. Recalling remarks made last week, far-right leader Jordan Bardella cautioned Prime Minister Bayrou against blindly adhering to President Macron's policies. As tensions rise, the government's ability to address the urgent needs of its territories and secure a stable economic future remains uncertain, leaving the country at a crossroads.
Colombian authorities seized cocaine worth over $50 million over the country's coastline. According to the Colombian Coast Guard, a shipwrecked vessel carried nearly 1.5 tons of cocaine off the coast of Buenaventura on December 17. Reportedly, 3 men and black packages were floating near Coast Guard ships. The boat, heading to Central America, was carrying cocaine valued at over $50 million on the international market. The 3 men were rescued and detained. A sea lion was discovered peacefully sleeping on Ipanema beach in Rio de Janeiro, surprising both locals and visitors. The unusual appearance of the animal during the summer season has left beachgoers curious about its unexpected visit.
Ipanema Beach in Rio de Janeiro became the setting for a rare and captivating sight. A sea lion peacefully resting on the sands. The Maritime Rescue Group quickly cordoned off the area, allowing the animal to rest undisturbed. While the sea lion napped and yawned, observers from the community and the media kept their distance to ensure the animal's safety. De Araujo, who was one of the first to spot the sea lion, shared his amusement.
We arrived here in the morning to set up the school materials and saw some strange movement near the sea. When we approached, we noticed a sea lion making noise, very agitated and full of sand. It was very funny.
Suelen Santiago, the coordinator of a local beach monitoring project, suggested that the sea lion may have stopped to rest during its migration.
Today, here in Ipanema, we have the presence of an Antarctic sea lion. It's typical for these animals to visit Brazil during winter and spring, but it's rare to see one in the summer. We can observe that this animal is healthy, resting as part of its migration journey.
Experts believe the sea lion, likely carried by marine currents from the Antarctic region, is in good health and will continue its migration soon.
That's all from us at the moment. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.